Okay, thank you so much, Anuj. And as always, we kind of look forward to a very engaging panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Muniraju. I believe you're on the way to Parliament or maybe in office and kind of.
Thank you, Nikhilji. Thank you so much for inviting me for this August session. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
here.
for, while we would have loved to have you here in person, but then I guess HCL Tech is a technology company. We are living in 21st century skills, technology, and to have you virtually is just as good. We have Hyun. I was just seeing her visiting card. And Hyun, it is a fantastic card that you have, which is an inclusive card. And our topic today is poverty and CSR. And inclusion is a very important. Deependra, good afternoon, Deependra. So nice to see you. Because Deependra works in the space of inclusion. Hyun will talk a bit about how this UN organization, UNICEF, is working very closely to assist in poverty alleviation. And Dr. Naveen Sirohi, he's a dear friend of mine. We were colleagues together at the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. We were together at the IICA, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. And Naveen heads up the School of Finance. Hyun heads up, she's the Chief Social Policy at UNICEF. And she works extensively across the country. And in fact, we were just having a chat, Surbi, myself and Ashutosh. We were having a chat over a cup of tea. And we were quite amazed at her level of understanding of the Indian geography, and maybe I kind of did not speak it out, but it felt to me that she knew more about the Indian geography than some of us. So thank you so much, all of you. We have a timer, so we will kind of time the initial pieces for about 5 to 6 minutes to each of the speakers. The topic is poverty and CSR. And Dr. Muniraju, I would request you to set the context. I was reading the newspaper reports, and this is this amazing data that our finance minister has recently kind of presented in the interim budget. And I quote her, and she says that about 25 crore Indians have been pulled out of poverty over the past decade. So with the pursuit of the government programs, almost 25 people have come out of multi-dimensional poverty in the last 8 to 10 years. So while we'll go a little bit deeper into this in the conversation, I would request you to help us, to set the context for this discussion by telling us about how NITI Aayog is playing this very seminal role at a very fulcrum level from the government of India's side, because the audience that we have here today is the civil society. We have, as I said, representation from UNICEF, and we have IICA here. The idea and the end goal of this conversation and the dialogue is that how can we strengthen the hands of the government to see how CSR can partner, catalyze this process of reduction of poverty. And I was also seeing the data, Dr. Muniraju, some of these Bimaru, so-called Bimaru states, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh, out of them, all 4 of them have had massive strides in the last 8 to 10 years coming out of poverty or, coming out of this multi-dimensional poverty index. So over to you, and if you can help us understand this a little bit better.
Thank you, Nikhilji. And at the outset, I really congratulate and appreciate the efforts of HCLFoundation for bringing all your partners together to deliberate on various issues of the development, and also contribution of CSR towards the upliftment of the human capital and livelihood opportunities for the people who are on the ground. Of course, panelists are there. Uni, she is the expert in the social protection and social sector. And of course, Naveenji from IICA, which is the core organization working towards CSR and capacity building of the community, which is engaged in CSR implementation. We all know that government is doing a lot of efforts to bring all people at par with each other equally. And we in India distributed on various segments of social groups are there. And government, both at the national level and at the state level, are implementing several programs focusing on the poverty, starting from MG Narega, which is the core employment generation program, where the wages are paid for the contribution, labor contribution. Similarly, we have health protection programs, we have food security missions, we have nutrition mission, to bring all segment of the population, to uplift them and see that there is no poverty remains in India, and because India is predicted by many multinational agencies, some multinational agencies, we don't know without any accurate data. They are saying that India's hunger is higher than any other countries, neighboring countries, and poverty is higher like that. But actually, if you see practically, Indian government and Indian corporate sector really contributing hugely to uplift its citizens in terms of livelihood, in terms of skills. There are a lot of things are happening on the bit by bit, but subsequently, we know that government programs are making much efforts. Of course, subsequently, CSR is filling the gaps. And we know that CSR contribution is huge. And we have huge committed professionals in the CSR who are really interacting with various development departments, implementing the programs. Wherever the gaps are there, their interventions are happening. We know that NITI Aayog is implementing this aspirational districts program, where CSR really, I appreciate again CSR corporates, they are hugely contributed to improve the basic indicators in terms of health, education, nutrition, and also building the infrastructure in the aspirational districts. Now we have come up with the aspirational blocks program, which is the Prime Minister's major flagship program to bring all the blocks in terms of their infrastructure, in terms of their health indicators, in terms of educational indicators, that to quality education in the schools, and also improving the nutrition values among the children and the lactating and pregnant mothers. So here, really, CSR is contributing hugely. We day-to-day basis, NITI Aayog monitor the progress from all aspirational districts as well as aspirational blocks. There are multiple corporates who are really contributing to address the poverty. Now come to the how CSR can further enhance the human capital. That too, we all know that India is the highest populated country in the world. We are number one. And there are many developed countries where population is going down. They really need human resources to manage day-to-day affairs in their countries, where India's population can be trained based on the skill requirement overseas. And you know that Ministry of External Affairs has signed many MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, with many developed countries to supply human resources. For example, I'll give you the Japan. Japan alone requires human capital of about 6 lakh care service providers, because the Japan population is aging and also other developed population is aging, where they require certain skills to help the senior citizens, disabled and other needy people to manage their day-to-day affairs. And also there are specialized skills programs. For example, agriculture. Agriculture in Japan contribution, though it is low, but they need some food sustainability. To promote agriculture, they need some skilled manpower, where corporates really can address this gap by skilling the human resource of India. Like 10th past, they can be provided Japanese language training, they can be provided agriculture instruments training, and also they can be supplied to the countries, because they provide both crew and for airfare, and they hire manpower, they provide there, and they pay good salaries. They can really contribute to the India's economic growth as well as the economic and sustainability of the Japan's economy. So that's how I gave just an example. But when many other countries are required human resource in terms of service providers, care services are concerned. Similarly, specialized skill training programs, wherever, for example, Canada requires huge human resource in terms of technicalities concerned, where corporates can really train. Now, the focusing on the skill, next comes to the livelihood opportunities. We know that Honorable Prime Minister launched Prime Minister's Janman program for the tribals, especially the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, where government has provided about 26,000 crores huge budget to improve the indicators in terms of transportation, mobility, infrastructure, and education, health, all the parameters to improve it. There are certain gaps where again comes to this human resource development, that is skilling. The many tribals who are graduated, they need some specified trainings to get into employment and also start their own entrepreneurship. You are an industry. Corporates or industries are really can provide skill training required in the industry. They can be hired in the industry. they can be provided good wages, and also subsequently, if they are not able to start their own, they work with the industry, they can be given entrepreneur skills so that they can start their own enterprises. For example, tribals. You all know that the millets are the one of the major program we started, and the current year is the millet year for the UN. And India is the country which is contributing huge millets and tribals. For example, tribal population, they grow a lot of millets. They are nutritionally sustainable and also contribute to the good health condition, reducing the diabetic condition and all. Here we can promote that millets through skilling, food processing, and that's how corporates can really add value to the government initiatives, and also building the capacity and also marketing of the products. There are many products which tribals are not able to bring it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muniraju. I hope you can stay on with us for a while, because if you can, that will be really nice. Because I do have a couple of questions to ask you as well, and we would be very keen that the audience is also able to ask you. I would now request Hyun, from your perspective at UNICEF, and we were just discussing over a cup of tea. One is very briefly about how UNICEF is collaborating with government and with civil society and with corporates, and how more specifically the NGOs who are present over here, they can get more ideas about the year that is coming to strengthen government's hands in order to reduce poverty further. The NITI Aayog has come out with a larger game plan, and all of us are subsets of it. So over to you, Hyun, and how can you kind of give those ideas as well as suggestions?
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So, नमस्कार, मेरा नाम ह्यून, मैं यूनिसेफ में काम करती हूँ. मैं हिंदी थोड़ी थोड़ी बोलती हूँ, so apologies. Yeah. But it's excellent. I just echoing Dr. Muniraju, who I work very closely with in NITI Aayog around the equity and child rights agenda. I really want to thank HCLFoundation, Mr. Pant. We have leadership here, as well as my esteemed panelists from ICCA. This is such a timely topic, partnering for change in 2024. And let me just start by saying that SDGs, we have now midpoint of the Sustainable Development Goals, and SDG 17 is what?
Partnerships.
Partnerships. It's the glue to accelerating the SDGs. So I think this is very timely. And what I would, as UNICEF and representing the UN family, if we were to prioritize where all of the partners from civil society, companies, UN should focus on is children. We have 460 million children in India alone. You have a youth bulge. So children and youth make up a majority of the population. And if we don't cater to their rights, we'll lose a whole opportunity for India. So, and then I just want to start with the global MPI. You mentioned the national MPI, and there has been extremely good progress in terms of eradication of poverty, reduction of poverty in India and many places around the world. But the global MPI last year, it highlighted few very key things for policy attention. One is, out of the 111 countries that they studied in the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, 50% of those that were multidimensional poor were children under 18. If you drill down in terms of the age category, it's 0 to 9. So starting from prenatal to the early years, especially around factors, they also looked down, honed in. What are the areas that need more attention? It was nutrition. It was schooling, years of attendance and schooling. So I heard many speakers talk about education, nutrition, and I know that you're very, very hardly working on these issues, which is good. And we talk about, a lot of the effects of COVID-19. We had learning loss globally. We have climate change. We have the conflicts around the world. Just recently, we had COP28. Our deputy executive director, who was there in COP28, talked about climate crisis as a child rights crisis. So 40 million children globally had learning disrupted because of all of the natural disasters. And some people talked about the rains, the floods, the cyclones, the drought. It's everywhere. And this is particularly relevant for India context, where it is very vulnerable to climate change impacts. So I think we need to have a strong lens of climate change because of those 3 C's, many children were pushed into poverty, many people were pushed into poverty despite many gains we have had. And just a reminder, why is it that you're focusing on ultra poor? SDG 1, it's about SDG 1, ending poverty. Why do you think it's the first SDGs? It's the unfinished agenda of the Millennium Development Goals, and the #1 priority, it's a basic right, to be lifted out of poverty, and it already provides a blueprint. And I'm going to focus on social protection. SDG 1 talks about monetary poverty, extreme poverty. SDG target 1.2 talks about multidimensional poverty, which we just talked about. 1.3 actually talk about linking those ultra poor, those most vulnerable people, to social protection, because that's the good news. There is a lot of evidence and science that shows that social protection is a very proven, effective strategy in a program. And 1.4 talks about basic services such as health, nutrition, education, wash, so forth. And it also talks about financial inclusion, access to technology, and then 1.5 talks about resilience of communities around climate, socio-economic shocks, and climate change. And it also talks about gender, the importance of having a pro-gender framework, and then lastly about maximum resources. So just in terms of priorities, what can we do? So I talked about social protection. There's further evidence, and I talked about the vulnerabilities of the early years. There's a lot of countries that have worked on social protection targeting young children that has shown improvements in nutrition outcomes, education outcomes, even crime rate reduction, and then also the economy is growing by giving that added cash transfer, in-kind benefits. So there's a lot of evidence already shows the impact of social protection programs, such in the case of India, the NREGA, you have the PMMVY, you have the health insurance scheme, disability benefits. You have many social protection programs that have actually contributed, as Dr. Muniraju has mentioned, reducing poverty. So just short in terms of, because I probably use a lot of time, just in terms of areas that I think civil society can work around. One is, as Dr. Muniraju mentioned, there is the aspirational district program, but there's also aspirational blocks program, where now they're focusing on the tribal and very vulnerable populations. If we can have civil society working on those geographic locations where with, let's say, access and awareness around social protection programs for vulnerable communities, that's one area. Second is, with the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, they launched the localization of SDGs initiative. I don't know if anyone has heard of LSDGs under MOPR. Yeah. So they have a theme 3. They have 9 themes. They categorize the SDGs around. Theme 3 is child-friendly villages. And you will be heartened to know that when I went to an event, they were presenting 66,000 GPs have signed up as a sound cup that they will make their GPs into a model child-friendly villages. And that would have the early years, the creche, the Anganwadi cum creche, the early, the preschools, the access to education, the health, the wash. So this is an opportunity because the elected officials are very interested, and we need the NGOs to work closely with the Gram Panchayat leaders of government in these initiatives to bring the knowledge. And key is, as I mentioned, the awareness about social protection programs, leveraging the SDG, the frontline workers like ASHAs and ANMs. So we have an opportunity there. Lastly, I would talk about the care component. A few talked about the urban slum. So now as UNICEF, we're really looking at the issue as urban programming. And I think there's an opportunity. Although 70% of the world by 2050 will be living in cities, the population. And India, it could be upwards, recently in a talk, a government official mentioned upwards of maybe 60%. And the informal settlements and slum area have the most vulnerable populations, the migrants, the people and children of disability. And we have something called National Urban Livelihood Mission by the Ministry of Urban Housing and Urban Affairs, where they're thinking of adding the care component, so that also the informal female workers in those sectors are able to have their children in those quality, affordable creches, and they can go to work. The children are provided with the quality care and nurture and support. So I think I'll just stop here, but those are some of the things that we should focus on, the urban, but those opportunities around the NITI Aayog aspirational blocks, as well as the MOPR child-friendly local governance opportunities. So let me stop here.
We'll take up some questions, you know. So thank you so much, Hyun. So to the audience, I would just say before I ask Naveen to come in with the CSR perspective, so when you're writing your project proposals, what you're hearing from NITI Aayog and what you're hearing, say, from UNICEF, these are also very important need assessment indicators that you're hearing. So be very alert and alive in a session like this that HCL Foundation, and very rightly, Hyun, you said, all of you are here, this is called Partnering for Change. This is SDG 17 by itself, very nicely highlighted by her. And we're also catering to the first SDG, which is SDG 1, which is poverty. And she very rightly mentions the unfinished agenda. And I was reading, you know, in this paper of NITI Aayog that over the next few years, they want to bring it down. So it has come down from 29% to about 11 point some percent in the last decade. And their target is to bring it to about 1% over the next few years, till I think this is 2047, when the 100 years is completed. So Naveen, from the perspective of CSR, and you're also a finance person, I was reading that one of the key indicators that MPI looks in is also, obviously it is standard of living amongst the three, which is health, education, and standard of living. What India gives a special importance is also to bank accounts. And because, you know, if there are bank accounts, then there can be direct credits, etc. But we'll come to that more specific as you go along. Can you share from your perspective how CSR has contributed? You represent IICA over here. And the NGOs who are present, how can they further leverage their CSR partnerships to strengthen whatever Dr. Muniraju has just said and what Hyun has just mentioned?
Thanks, Nikhil. The advantage of being the last panelist is that the earlier panelists make your life easy. So I will structure my thoughts with 6 minutes in hand in 4 phases before we come to the financial inclusion and the financial literacy part. They are integrated things. The topic of the day is ultra poverty. So let's start a little bit with the ultra poverty as a concept. Let's diagnose the problem well so that we can move to the solution well. Because ultra poverty is actually the bottom of the poverty line. Then I'll try to share what can be done based on that, what is being done in India, and then ultimately partnering for change. This is what the theme is.
That is the theme.
How this theme can actually be utilized on the using the glue of CSR in a very collaborative manner. So ultra poverty as a term was given by Michael Lipton, and the idea is that those people on the bottom of the poverty line itself who cannot meet 100% of their food requirement, calorie requirement, basically 80% requirements, and 80% of their money goes into meeting those food requirement itself. They are also known as extreme poor, ultra poor, and poorest of the poor. There have been a lot of improvement on poverty as such, but ultra poverty is a bigger challenge, is a difficult challenge. And Dr. Muniraju has just mentioned about the tribal focus on the tribal areas, 26,000 crores focus. I think the next phase the government is moving to
absolutely.
that side.
You mentioned that.
They live in geographically isolated, hard to reach areas. If we see defining the target audience, if we have to see, they have food insecurity, they have little or no assets, limited aspirations for the future, and are socially, economically, and geographically isolated. They lack community acceptance, confidence, and support system, generally engaged in subsistence agriculture, bagging, and other informal jobs, as they are barred from regular labor market. Malnutrition on further leads to health issues, which again is a drain on their own resources, which makes them borrow informally through money lenders, and then it's a vicious trap.
Yeah.
You know, it goes into generations. Generally underserved by the market and unaffected by economic policies, but happy that now we are moving into that. So what is needed is actually a multi-dimensional, comprehensive, long-term, and substantive approach. A transactional approach will not work if we have to really cure this thing. We have talked about MPI with a lot of non-financial indicators already being covered here. One example which is successful globally is the graduation approach, which was used by BRAC, an NGO in Bangladesh, as a solution to reducing ultra-poverty. So this approach has been used by 100+ organizations in more than 50+ countries, customized. General philosophy is the same, but customized, localized, and very successfully used. It is a comprehensive, time-bound, integrated, and sequenced set of interventions. 6 complementary and sequential components. First is the productive assets or the financial support, training, coaching, access to savings, and matching the savings as a nudge or a behavioral change so that they start saving. Healthcare access, and then community, role of community mobilization. Each designed to address the specific deprivations. A lot of central government is working, a lot of state governments are also working on this. I think way forward is the battle against ultra poverty cannot be undertaken in isolation. All of us have to come together. The major stakeholders are government, business, corporate sector, the players, the change makers who are sitting all here. We all have to come together. Each stakeholder has its own challenges and own strengths. So, but as a team, we have to get that synergy, the better approach. And the most critical part actually can be done by the people who are there in doing the CSR work, actually. They can bring all those stakeholders together. So I think the way forward has to be an integrated approach, long-term approach. And I'm sure that's where we are moving forward with the vision of Bharat at 2047, eliminating poverty. So these are my initial thoughts, and let's see
Thank
how
you so much. Thank you so
evolves.
much. I will also be inviting some questions. So if people want to raise their hands, you can do that. I have one set of questions to each of the panelists as well. Dr. Muniraju, you're still there. Thank you so much. NITI Aayog, which is the National Institute for Transforming India, and when I'm reading the data and the analysis and seeing how NITI Aayog is also trying to engage closely with the social sector, and I want all the 3 panelists to now address the audience directly in the sense that please tell me 1, 2, 3, what in your perspective they should do next when they go back home today, in terms of how they develop their own vision for the coming year, their own approaches, like if you are a corporate, then the kind of CSR policy framework that you, what may be new changes that you may like to bring in. Very specific, very precise, 1, 2, 3. Dr. Muniraju, 1 minute, maximum 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nikhil ji, once again. You know that Honorable Prime Minister has given a clear-cut message, Sabka Saath, Sabka Prayas, and Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Vikas. This is the core guiding principle to all the stakeholders, that we all need to work together hand in hand, holding hand in hand, and addressing the core issues. Who are the left out? Leaving no one behind is the ultimate goal of this UN Sustainable Goal. And keeping that in mind, everyone, corporates, civil society organizations, and also government, together, if we work in addressing the problems of the destitutes, the poor, the left out poor, and by providing adequate livelihood opportunities and providing skilling and educating, creating awareness about the government programs and linking the people who are left behind with the government programs, then automatically if one is getting the benefit out of the government programs, then definitely they will come out of the poverty. This is how we all need to work together. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Dr. Muniraju, I have a question from you. I work very in remote areas myself, through an NGO of which I am a part. I sometimes feel that NITI Aayog may not be capturing all the data from the ground. Often I've seen that the district collector, while the district collector must be compiling, and this is a couple of aspirational districts where I'm working, there are certain projects whose report and the outcomes are not getting mapped at the DC's office. So if the DC is reporting to the NITI Aayog, somewhere this outcome is not getting mapped, I feel. A lot of NGOs have said this to me also. So is there a way by which NITI Aayog, maybe through the district collectors or the deputy commissioners as we call them, can ensure that whatever development is happening can obviously get first synchronized at the headquarters at the district, which is the DC's office, before it gets reported? Because when you are compiling these reports on poverty reduction, if you're able to get some of this data as well, maybe that will further strengthen. While this is data on the work that is already done, but if the results come out in a more comprehensive manner, maybe it will be more motivating for the people. Also, the learnings can be better shared. So, is there a way by which NITI Aayog can engage? I don't know how you can engage directly with the NGOs, though you have the Darpan portal. And last time you told me that the Darpan portal is also going to become more interactive, and we are looking forward to that. How soon can that happen? So that if NGOs who are doing work at the grassroots, can they report their data directly to that portal also? And somewhere like the CSR.gov data is coming from corporate reports, can the NGOs also submit, and maybe some collaboration or some tallying can happen at the NITI Aayog level? So these are my thoughts, because I also implement on the ground and I see that there are some gaps. What would you like to say about that?
Excellent, Nikhil. So you know that ground level realities. You know that Honorable Prime Minister is very, very digital savvy. And we have developed a MyGov portal, which is for the capturing the ideas, strategies, and gap areas. Here, the civil society organization can really provide inputs wherever the gaps are there, wherever the mismatch is there. Then MyGov portal captures the data, analyze the data, and also report to the government, including NITI Aayog. They submit the reports to NITI Aayog wherever gaps are there. Here, and we all know that civil society organizations are very active in advocating the issues. Right. I really appreciate that is required, and they are the watchdogs on the ground and eye openers for the policymakers and also program implementers.
So you are saying that through MyGov they can share the data of their work?
Yeah, exactly.
NGOs do that. So just for my understanding, because I was not aware of this that much, just checking with the NGOs over here, how many of you are actually reporting your work through the MyGov? Because we would like to do this, Dr. Muniraju, and if that can help you in your larger evaluation of what's happening at the deepest level, at the widest level, that can be very, very, I think, enabling for the government. Also, do please, this is my request to you, if the Darpan portal, because that's a good portal that has been set up, and if it can be made more interactive, that's a suggestion as well. And the sooner because I think most of the NGOs would be registered on the Darpan portal here. Can you raise your hands? So these NGOs are already there on the Darpan portal.
100%, yeah.
If we can maybe enable a couple of tools over there where they can report at the annual level while they are submitting their annual returns, because the corporates are doing it on MCA 21 and they report what CSR spending they are doing. So thank you so much for that. Hyun, from your side, you've been hearing all of this, and I really don't know how much on the CSR front you may be aware, but still, with the kind of experience that you've had in the last couple of years, you've been in India, and what you're hearing from the conversations here, again, 1, 2, 3, what would you like the NGOs to do in terms of key action points from your perspective? You've mentioned children, you've mentioned the youth. You've mentioned SDG 1 as the unfinished agenda, and you've mentioned SDG 17, which is partnering. And we are here for partnering for change. So 1, 2, 3, very specifics.
Thank you very much. So I have been here 2 years and plus in India, but as an organization, UNICEF has been in India. This is the 75th year.
75th year, fantastic,
75th year.
fantastic.
Across, we have 13 state offices covering 22 states and union territories. And we have been supporting the government in catalytic programs such as ICDS and so forth. So we hope to draw experiences for greater collaboration with HCLFoundation as well as civil society. Number one, as I mentioned, our vision and our section's vision in UNICEF is all children everywhere lives free from poverty and has access to inclusive social protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope this is a shared common agenda with all of you. And number one, as I mentioned, facilitating the awareness and uptake of social protection program and schemes that are existing in the program for the most marginalized populations that may not be aware. And focus on children, child-centric, woman-centric schemes such as PMMVY, but you have a disability benefit, you have others. And girl-child cash transfer, LLYs, you have different states have those cash transfer schemes focus on the girl child, linking it with vocational skills, livelihoods, and opportunities later on. Those. Second is the care. As UNICEF, we believe that inclusive care is part of a strong and inclusive social protection system. So if you can maybe look at the care agenda, and this is very relevant in both rural and urban, and I talked about some of the opportunities both under the MOPR localization of SDGs, child-friendly villages, as well as the National Urban Livelihood Mission. That's second. Third, hear the voices of children. So the people in the community. So our whole focus of the child-friendly villages as a technical knowledge partner to MOPR is institutionalization of Bal Sabas and Mahila Sabas. So their voices are reflected in GPDP process. So this is a big agenda, and it's the right to participate and to have their voices listened to in key decisions that affect their lives is actually part of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's also in the Indian Constitution. They look at the fundamental rights of children everywhere across India, and that's a big core agenda for the Viksit Bharat. I think if we don't focus on children, if we don't invest in the human capital, we won't be able to have inclusive and economic growth, economic and social growth for the nation.
Right.
So, boho dhanyabad for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Hyun. So I also wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that you have created various training modules and a lot of content. So is there some of it which the NGOs can access, and can they use some of that content and the training modules in the projects that they are undertaking? Suppose an NGO submits a proposal to HCLFoundation. Suppose I am an NGO submitting a proposal to HCLFoundation. Can I have access to some of this work that you've done so that, number one, CSR doesn't have to duplicate that? Because CSR money is 2%, it is shareholder money. We want to use it as catalyst. We want to make this 200 work like 200, the 2% look like 200. High impact, so very focused. Mm-hmm. So I'm keen to ask you, what can you tell these NGOs? Like I was asking Dr. Muniraju, because my questions are going to be very focused because I work on the ground and I know where the gap is. What can you tell these NGOs that you can share with them in terms of the resources that you have? And because if that is possible, so while we do have an HCLFoundation Academy and we will explore ways to collaborate with you, what is it that from the public domain that these NGOs can maybe go to your website and access? Suppose I am working in the space of primary education, mm-hmm. and you just talked about safety for children. So if I include a component of, let's say, children coming to school with good attendance, and I'm looking at these parameters where schooling and the attendance and all of these are important parameters to eradicate poverty. So if in my project where I get some CSR money, I can enhance impact by using some of your work, that will be amazing actually.
Definitely. So we operate in over 190 countries and territories globally. So we actually have evidence and materials that span not only India, but all over the world that's related to child rights agenda. How many of you are focusing on children as a target population?
Working with children, how many of you are? Oh, many of them.
So
Actually,
that's very good. I mean, I'm very, very pleased. Excellent. So,
can we have a
yeah.
mic, please?
So,
एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट के थ्रू सारे टीचर्स को एक्सेस किया है पोर्टल पे, तो जो भी यूनिसेफ का मटेरियल डेवलप हुआ है और उसमें हम भी साथ में काम करते हैं स्कूल्स के साथ.
So I think, did you understand that? No, you understood that? So she works in Rajasthan, and I think UNICEF works in Rajasthan. So their content that we developed is available, she said.
Exactly. So I just wanted to say with the, we have, for the Child Friendly Villages initiative, in the MOPR website, we actually have the Bal Sabha and Mahila Sabha guidelines, how to conduct good practice compendium in terms of what do child-friendly villages look like, what are the experiences from the different states. Second, we have worked with the National Institute of Panchayati Raj, the NIRDPR, which is the training institute for this initiative, and we have a child resource center where various materials are already available online. And of course, we do have the UNICEF website and ongoing studies and evidence that we would like to curate and share with the various practitioners that they can use it. But just going back, we have so much evidence and academics and those working on evidence collection on what works and what doesn't work for children. And that's one of the roles of UNICEF, trying to be that apex knowledge management kind of function to share those knowledge. But though many materials are, as you mentioned, available in the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, because we have been supporting the various government ministries in developing the modules. The aspirational block program technical modules for block officials, UNICEF has supported the technical inputs for the health, nutrition, education, water and sanitation, as well as the financial, social and financial inclusion modules. And this is being rolled out as we speak this week in NIRDPR Hyderabad as a TOT to later kind of deliver it to the block officials. And we have been working on aspirational districts program and so forth. And
so this is very useful. Just a question to the NGOs here. Would it be a good idea if through the HCLFoundation Academy, we are able to source these resources and maybe get the links, etc. And Gaurav, you're also here, Ashutosh. Because often, there is so much of information on the net, Hyun, that people get confused.
Yes,
so,
I also.
So that's where the foundation comes in, that's where the academy comes in. We are running courses on CSR, on reproductive health, etc. Would it be okay that if we share some of those resources and links through,
Definitely.
and for the larger, would that be
Definitely.
useful? NGOs, can you raise your hands and let me know? Because
And
then
I
we
would
can
like to suggest all of you working on child rights agenda, I would personally like to applaud all of you because you are on the ground, you are the bridge maker, you are working closely with government, other partners, including UNICEF. So on behalf of UNICEF, really thank you for prioritizing children in your programs, and thank you for HCLFoundation for giving this opportunity and prioritizing child rights.
Thank you so much, Hyun. Naveen, we got a bit of an extension, so I am kind of taking it a little bit ahead. So, Anuj, we have about 5-7 minutes left. Huh? We have another 5-7 minutes?
We have.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Naveen,
we can take another 5
now,
minutes. Yeah.
your core strength is finance. Huh? And I want to come back to you on that because, again, I'm reading these parameters and, standard of living is one of them that I'm reading. And here I'm seeing that in India, bank accounts, as I mentioned to you, is a key area, including indicators like housing, household assets, type of cooking fuel, access to sanitation, drinking water, and electricity. So, amongst the 3 parameters for MPI, which is the multidimensional poverty, education, health, and standard of living. I'm coming to standard of living with you because you're the finance guy here. So, when these NGOs are working at the very deep level, grassroots level, what can they do? Suppose if I'm putting up a proposal and my requirement is to train 100 people and I am required to say 70% will get employability, and typically if the employability means 10 to 12 to 15,000 rupees a month amount they are earning, what kind of financial training can also be imparted so that if those people who earn this money can also do the right kind of savings and the right kind of investments, then maybe that 15,000 is equivalent to 25,000. Maybe that is equivalent to 20,000 rupees. And when we are actually guiding them to take up these jobs, because what I'm experiencing on the ground, a lot of the kids, the youth, when they go to these jobs, they leave the jobs in a month's time and they run away. And those who are doing the projects are patting themselves on the back. We have done 70% placement. What is it? Because finance is the key. While CSR is also about spending, this earning thing, and I'm finding these NGOs need to do something. What can that be? And because if this succeeds, then we actually strengthen this poverty alleviation program of the government.
Yes, very nice observation, Nikhil. I think what we need to get these young people imbibed is the long-term perspective. I think they need to be told that wealth creation or moving upward requires time. So one is the time factor they should have, and these are more, rather than technical skills, they more need behavioral skills, behavioral mindset shift. So one is the long-term perspective. They have to be shown how just a decade, 10 years looks very long, but if you see the human life, 80 years, it's just 15%, not even 15% of the time. That financial discipline in that part will do a long way in changing your destiny. Second is, normally investing is not meant for them. Just two things, savings, and for that savings they need budgeting. So these budgeting and savings, these two focused areas at that level will go a long way to bring in a lot of discipline and those behavioral things. So, and then accordingly some kind of workshops, advocacy campaigns, and maybe some toolkits may be developed so that they get used to it.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think now we'll just open it up for the house. If you have some questions, I don't know if Dr. Muniraju is there, but both Hyun and, yes ma'am, you're there. And if the
sure, so we'll take up the questions quickly.
We have, how much time you'll have to tell? Because
let's take two questions and then close.
Okay,
yeah.
We talk of poverty alleviation, and many governments are taking cash transfers as one of the, I don't know, solution or whatever it is. Is it working out? Because we are seeing, although in Andhra Pradesh, the government is giving as 14 or 15,000 rupees per year to mother's account, but the dropout ratio is very high.
The dropout, so you're saying that the money of about 14 to 15,000 is going directly to the accounts of the mothers,
yes,
but their children who are going to school are dropping out also.
That's what for the money is being transferred. And also giving from toe to top, everything from shoes, socks to up till the ribbons.
So just to say that there's a lot of evidence on cash transfer, and you're right, ma'am, that cash transfer alone will not be sufficient. So what we promote is what's called Cash Plus. It has to be complementary, information and knowledge sessions and complementary referral services to other programs that really make a difference. So there are a lot of evidence that show, for example, the more the country moves into high income, upper middle income, you see countries like Thailand, they now did an evaluation of their Universal Child Grant program. First, it targeted 0 to 3. It showed remarkable improvements in child nutrition, women's empowerment opportunities, and education enrollment. After the evaluation, the government progressively expanded it to 0 to 6. You have EU that just started after a child poverty analysis, multidimensional. In the EU, after COVID-19, they have several countries in the European Union launched the Child Guarantee Program. It's a universal child cash transfer program, but linked with complementary services, and it focuses on the ultra vulnerable, which is migrant children, migrant families, and children with disabilities. And having that additional care, deploying things like assistive technology, specialized care for children with disabilities. So those are based on actual evidence and analysis. And things like MPI is very critical, and we need it localized. And I have visited Kerala. For example, Kerala, economy-wise, is doing very well. The government actually, with the Kerala Institute of Kila, and I met the Minister of Local Government. where their big agenda is the ultra poor. So they actually identified all of the poor based on a criteria, maybe it's MPI, I don't know the details, and they develop micro plans. How are we going to actually break the cycle of poverty for these, it's thousands of individuals, it's not millions, but they're trying to have tailored strategies to actually deal with the issue of poverty. And you see this in many high-income countries. There's still inequalities. The more you go into high income, the US, you see this. Why did US during the COVID-19 have the tax credits? They actually did evidence around this that showed big poverty reduction, especially on the poor, the African Americans, the more marginalized population, and showed improvement. So there is a lot of evidence that show the benefit of cash transfer, and therefore it's also in the SDG 1 as a specific target.
Thank you so much.
Cash plus, I would say cash plus.
Thank you so much. So, Naveen,
just,
and then I'll
quick-
also add to it.
Yeah, just quick thoughts. I think we're running out of time. I think, ma'am, all these efforts, these transactional, or these are part of the solution. They cannot be the full solution. I think one area, this is my personal observation, and just to keep it simple, is to work on the behavior of the target audience, target group. Because unless they buy the idea, unless they implement and unless they know how this can change, bring that change, we are talking about the change, and they also need to change to bring that change. So somewhere that behavioral side needs a little more focus. But just doing these kind of things, of course, will have a balanced, mixed reviews, if you say. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say this, ma'am. Just wanted to ask you, when you are talking about these direct transfers, can you get to know which households are getting this transfer? Is that possible as an NGO through the public portal?
It's all like below poverty line, and also for every house, one child they are getting.
So what I'm saying is,
Mostly the families are preferring to give to the boy child than the girl child.
No, so 1 minute. If you are saying, and this I'm saying from the perspective of a CSR person who's also part of an NGO. Now, as part of your need assessment, can you identify these households? I think you can, because if you're saying
Yes.
it is the kids who are getting dropped out.
Yes.
So CSR project that you develop, please have these children as some of your beneficiaries. Because then you are strengthening a gap area in the government program. Because if you're saying that the government program is passing on direct credit of 15,000 rupees a month, and still the children are dropping out. So your need assessment survey could focus on why these children are dropping out, number one. Maybe the schools are not having the pull. The infrastructure is not there. There is good money coming to the house of the mother, but the kid is going to a school where there is no classroom. So can you then help build that infrastructure so that at least malnutrition and lack of home income is not the reason for the dropout? So that's where you come in, I think.
Okay.
Are you getting my point?
Yes,
Absolutely.
got it.
Yes.
I really don't want to come in between, Nikhil, but now we have to.
Okay, I think last one.
Just a very quick one. Yeah, Dr. Ban.
Yeah, sure. Hyun, this question is for you. We know that tropical and subtropical areas are more prone to climate vulnerabilities, and as you mentioned that this area also have a very large child and youth population. So as UNICEF, what is UNICEF vision towards incorporating climate action and resilience education from the very early stages, so that they are also, we are building a resilient community while we are dealing with poverty angles? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so just very short, but thank you for that question. Just going back to my earlier remarks, climate change is the priority of UNICEF as an organization. It's a big agenda. So every sector that we are working on, we are putting a climate change lens. As social policy, I mean, we're working on in the G20 process. We were participating in the G20 DR working group, and the big agenda we had was shock response and social protection. And given so many social protection schemes are existing in India, that disaster risk financing also flows into those social protection programs to expand, to reach more children during the time of before the disaster hits. That's another model that we look at. In other countries, they actually have, linked with early warning and forecasting system, they actually give cash transfers few days before the cyclone. So they can actually prepare, move their livestock, move their family to a safe place, do the pre-positioning of kids. So we have those models, but definitely in education sector, another big agenda is climate resilient schools. Climate change as an education curriculum, because it has to start early. So in the cases like Maharashtra, we actually supported the government on the first climate, this curriculum for children around climate change issues. So just to reiterate and reconfirm that it is a very big area and we should focus on it.
Thank you so much, Hyun. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Muniraju, if you're still there. I hope you didn't forget the answers to the parliamentary questions while we were throwing our questions to you. Thank you so much, Hyun, and thank you so much, Naveen. Over to you, Anuj.
Thank you so much, Nikhil. And I really don't want to become a bad person, but sincere thanks to all the panel. And we would now like to do the felicitations. I would invite Dr. Dhruv and Indira ji from Ajmer. She's the founder, member and executive director of Mahila Jan Adhikar Samiti, working in Rajasthan, Ajmer since 2000. And Dr. Dhruv, one of the senior advisors with us, been associated for the last 9 years. To please come over the stage. And Dr. Muniraju, once again, on behalf of HCL Foundation, many thanks. I think he dropped, but virtually we can always thank him. So that's Hyun for you, been associated with UNICEF since 2003. And Professor Naveen Sirohi, thank you once again, a banker turned academician. Very interesting session. Thank you once again. Can we have a round of applause before our esteemed panelists take their seats? Yeah. And requesting Dr. Dhruv to please felicitate Mr. Nikhil Pant also for moderating this session. Dr. Dhruv, we request you to please felicitate Dr. Dhruv, if you can give to Nikhil also. Stand for group picture. That's okay. A group picture, please.